Welcome to Gemara Academy. In this class, we will learn Tosfos Dibra Maschel, I lema da'ada sara hu da'ava karmelis, v'i loy loy hava karmelis. Let's begin. I lema da'ada sara hu da'ava karmelis, v'i loy loy hava karmelis. Here in the Gemara, we ask, what did Rav Sheshis mean when he said about a karmelis v'teifeses ada sara? And the Gemara asks, my v'teifeses ada sara. What did he mean when he said v'teifeses ada sara? The Gemara completes its question by saying, I lema, if you're going to tell me that what he meant is that, and we're going to use here the gears of our Gemara, not the gears that's written here in the Dibra Maschel, it's the gears of our Gemara, and we'll see Tosfos accepts this gears as well. That ilema the iika mechitza asara huda have a karmelis. That if it has walls that are 10 tefachim high, then it's a karmelis. V'iloi loy have a karmelis, and if it doesn't have walls that are 10 tefachim high, it's not a karmelis. We negated this possible interpretation of Rav Sheshis because we have a teaching from Rav Gidol that contradicts it. So this is the part of the Gemara that Tosfos is coming to talk about. So let's see the Tosfos inside. Pirush Rashi explains, and it's in purple because it's explaining the Gemara. Kigain, for example, Bika Mukefes Gadar. What would be an example of an area that has walls that are 10 tefachim high and is classified as a karmelis? And if the walls are not 10 tefachim high, it's not a karmelis. So he says the example is a Bika Mukefes Gadar, an area of fields that's surrounded and closed by a fence. V'hi Yisera al Beisa Saim, and it's larger than 2 Beisa. V'lei Hukaf Ladir, and the area was not enclosed for the purpose of residential use, which we know this as a karfif shalei hukaf ladira, and we learned already earlier that such an area that's larger than 2 beisa, surrounded by a wall, and it was not enclosed for the purpose of residential use. We know that in such an area, a person is not allowed to carry more than 4 amas. So we'd understand that the reason is because it's a karmelis. And now Rav Sheshis is telling us v'teifeses ada sara. This is only the din if the walls are 10 tefachim high, then it's considered a karmelis. However, if the walls are not 10 tefachim high, it won't be considered a karmelis. So that's how Rashi understands and explains what we were negating as a possible interpretation of Rav Sheshis. Not to say this, not to say that if it has walls that are 10 tefachim high, then it's a karmelis, and otherwise it's not. And Tosfos now is going to present 2 difficulties on this. Number, says Tosfos, v'kashal l'ri, and this is difficult to the ri. The harishus hayachidi, because this is a rishus hayachid, bein l'ula, bein l'Ravashi. Everybody agrees, whether according to Ula or Ravashi, everybody agrees that this case is not a karmelis, rather it's a rishus hayachid. The only thing is, since it's so large, therefore, the halacha is if it was enclosed for residential use, then it's a rishus hayachid, and we treat it as a rishus hayachid. However, if it was not enclosed for residential use, then although it's a rishus hayachid, we don't treat it as a rishus hayachid because it's so big. We say it's similar to rishus harabim, and it's usher to carry in it more than 4 amas. If that being the case, says Tosfos, he didn't need to include this as a case of a rishus hayachid from Rav Gidol. He could have included it as a case of a rishus hayachid from Ula and Ravashi, and we would have just presented the teachings that we already learned earlier. There's no need to introduce Rav Gidol. We could have simply said that both Ula and Ravashi that we learned about earlier will hold that this is not a case of a karmelis, rather it's a case of a rishus hayachid. So it can't be what Rav Sheshis meant. Says Tosfos further, v'oid, and furthermore, dehechi ka'amar, that how did he say v'iloi loy have a karmelis? And if not, the walls are not 10 tefachim high, then it's not a karmelis. How could we even think to say that this is what Rav Sheshis meant, that we need to negate it from Rav Gidol? We would never think such a thing. But an ocean and an area of fields, they don't have walls, and the Brisa told us that they are a karmelis. So we don't have to negate that Rav Sheshis didn't mean that if there's walls 10 tefachim high, then it's a karmelis, otherwise it's not. Of course Rav Sheshis didn't mean that, because we have a Brisa teaching us the cases of a karmelis, and those cases don't have walls that are 10 tefachim high, not a yam, an ocean, and not a big an area of fields. And so Tosfos here presents 2 difficulties that the Ri has on Rashi, and as a result he presents his own interpretation. And once again it's in purple because he's interpreting how to learn the Gemara. Venira l'Ri, and it seems to Ri, the Hachi Pirush, this is what the Pirush is. This is the explanation. If you're going to say Adi Ika Mechitzas Yud, that only if there are walls that are 10 tefachim high, then it's a karmelis, and if not, it's not a karmelis. The meaning is as follows: Hainu avir haroi lemechitzas asara. It needs to have the ear that's fitting for walls that are 10 tefachim high. In other words, not that it needs walls that are 10 tefachim high to have a karmelis, but rather that it could be built over there walls that are 10 tefachim high. Then it will be a karmelis. But if such walls cannot be built, it won't be a karmelis. So this doesn't contradict the Brisa, because an yam and a bika, an ocean and area of fields, they have the ability to build over their walls that are 10 tefachim high. So this is where Gemara came to negate, not to say that it needs the ability to build walls that are 10 tefachim high to be a karmelis, and otherwise it won't be a karmelis. And what would be an example of something that won't be a karmelis? Says Tosfos, La fuke bikam misucheches b'pachas miyud. This will exclude an area of fields that has a roofing on it that's lower than 10 tefachim high, al gabi kundasan, that's placed on top of posts. The loy have a karmelis. It won't be a karmelis kevin de'in gvaya yud, since it's not 10 tefachim high. The walls cannot be built around it that are 10 tefachim high, since it only has a height that's 9 tefachim. For example, we're just saying lower than 10. V'hav makom p'tur, in that area, and since it doesn't have the ability to build around it walls that are 10 tefachim high, it won't be a karmelis, rather it'll be a makom p'tur, umutur l'tatal b'kuli, and it'll be permitted to carry in the whole thing. And to this the Gemara says, v'amar Rav Gidol chulu, but Rav Gidol taught that even if the walls are not 10 tefachim high, it's not going to be a makom p'tur. Like we brought the case of Rav Gidol, that if there's a house whose roof is lower than 10 tefachim, it's usher to carry in it more than 4 amas. Clearly, it's not a makom p'tur. So here we presented in Tosfos, just to summarize the understanding of Rashi and the understanding of Ri. Rashi's understanding is that the Gemara was negating the following. If we would say that only if it has walls that are 10 tefachim high, then it's a karmelis. But if it doesn't have walls that are 10 tefachim high, it won't be a karmelis. And then we have the understanding of the Ri, which the Gemara is negating, is that if we would say that only if it has the ability to build walls that are 10 tefachim high, then it's a karmelis, and if it doesn't have the ability to build walls that are 10 tefachim high, then it's not a karmelis, rather a makom p'tur.